and thanks for tuning in to another show on irishracing.com. It's Formscan this week. An awful lot of racing on, and I'm delighted to be joined by Stephen Harris to preview. We're going to focus on the Newmarket card, maybe with a shout to a few other meetings at the end. But Stephen, a jam-packed weekend, I suppose, but the Newmarket card is definitely kind of the highlight, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of book your spot on the couch, Emma, isn't it? And don't move. I think there's 11 races on ITV, so it's fantastic for the armchair punters. Probably quite good for divorce lawyers as well this weekend, isn't it? You're basically not going to move from a sort of midday on Saturday till around about 10 o'clock at night on Sunday when England go out on news on penalties. But yeah, no, it's brilliant racing. And the good thing is, earlier in the week, we had like a load of rain on Monday and Tuesday, and it looked like it was going to be a sort of soft ground, a real messy, non-runners all over the shop weekend. But I think things have improved a touch, and it looks now as if it's going to be like good ground at Ascot, Newmarket, York, Chester. They've all dried out a bit, and the forecast looks fairly dry. So that should be a help to punters anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a bit of wind forecast as well for around the market area as well. So ground will probably be drying there, like you said, probably good, maybe good to soft at worst, but not as bad as expected. But I suppose we'll drive straight into it. I think we're going to skip the first race in Newmarket to Fillies Maiden, that we don't know a whole pile about any of them. So we'll go into one who we kind of know the horses a bit better, and it's the Bedford Lodge Hotel Fillies handicap. It's over the 7 furlongs. Top of the market here is Lulu's Gift for William Haggis and William Buick. 9-2 Miss Bo Delicious, and 15-2 Hard to Resist. I suppose, Stephen, looking at this, it might be a question of are you going to avoid the fillies that ran in the Sandringham at Ascot, because there's plenty in here that ran there, but the two at the top of the market skipped Ascot and coming here from smaller engagements, I suppose. But what's your take on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think looking at the markets, that it's sort of 4-1 the field. I'm quite surprised. I thought the top two, the Haggis filly and the Burke filly, were probably the standout contenders. As you say, I suspect they'll end up sort of 3-1 or 11-4. So the pair of them, something like that. It looks like one of those races that, I mean, there are opportunities this weekend because a lot of these markets are sort of untested. That the odds compilers have got an awful lot of races to price up, and I suspect perhaps this race isn't quite as competitive as you might suspect for the money. The top one of Haggis is, well, Lulu's Gift, as you say, she's completely unexposed. She's only had 2 runs on the turf. She was a good winner here on the July course in a small field last time out. Haggis is flying, 10 winners in the last fortnight. I think he's going at 24%. But the one I actually prefer is Carl Burke's Miss Bodacious. I was worried about the ground with her. It's all fast ground form, but now things have dried out. It should be good, really. I thought she did well to win last time out. She was absolutely backed off the boards into handicaps. She got the start wrong, and she was in a bad early position, but picked up smartly and was well on top at the finish, beating Cuban Melody quite comfortably. She goes up an extra furlong. I think that'll definitely suit her. As I say, Carl Burke's had 10 winners as well in the last fortnight. He's having an absolutely amazing season. So I thought she was the one to side. But I thought 9-2 was more than a fair price. I mean, the third in is Hard to Resist, who's got loads to prove after that reappearance effort, her reappearance effort. Ryan Moore's book, but she looks sort of priced up on the fact Moore's been booked to rider rather than anything else. And most of the others are pretty exposed or hard to fancy. So I thought 9-2 about Miss Bodacious was more than fair.
Yeah, it looks like a fair price there. I looked a little bit outside the top two in the market. I think if you go back a few years in this race, kind of the trends can be like fillies coming from the Sandringham. Now you have to go back to about 2019, I think, to see that. But they can come from the Sandringham, maybe not necessarily after running very well in Ascot. It can be a difficult race there, and they can come here and run pretty well, if not win it. And I thought look, she finished 8 in the Sandringham. You see it there in the form book, Aristeig. But I think maybe her finishing position probably sounds a bit worse than it actually looked on the day. I think she shaved fairly well that day. She was probably just on the wrong side of the draw. They kind of came from the opposite side as she was on. She ran a bit better than maybe the finishing position it suggests. So, like on the form book, I don't think it's probably as bad as it sounds. On the basis of that, like you'd probably say she's still fairly well treated off 89. I thought her run before that in Linkfield, look, it probably wasn't the strongest race, but she did kind of like a piece of work. She came from the back, cruised through, and picked them off very, very easily. She's kind of, like you said, look, plenty of these in here are fairly exposed, but I think she could still have a bit more off that mark of 89. I thought price of 8-1 looked fairly fair in that, even maybe for an each way bet. I think, of the fillies coming from Ascot, I'd say she'd be the pick of them. And just looking outside the top two in the market, I was quite keen on her. If you watch back that Ascot race, I think it's fairly easy to make a case for her there. So that would be my selection in the first. But we'll go on to the 250 then. It's a mile handicap. Betting is wide open for this one at the top of the market there. We've Kirat at 11-2 for Rafe Beckett and Ryan Moore. Volterra at 13-2 for Kevin Ryan. Tommy Eves disappointed in the Britannia at Ascot, of course, and it's around 8 or 9-1 bar those. Look, plenty, I suppose, to make a case for here, Stephen, but anything sticking out to you?
Yeah, I thought this was really hard. I think this is at least sort of 6 or 7-1 the field. Look around for the bookmakers offering extra places. I've seen 5. There'll be 6 on the day if you go looking. I thought I've got a horse here. I don't think he's probably good enough, but he's sort of he's. I've got to try and choose my words carefully here, Matt. I don't think he's been fancied on any of his runs so far this season. He's been big prices and very weak in the market, but he's trained by a very shrewd operation, Ben Brookhouse. I like small yards that are in form because they don't. Whereas we just talked about Haggis and Carl Burke, everyone knows they've had 10 winners, but Ben Brookhouse has actually had 3 winners from his last 8 runners. They're going really well. And Global Skies is a very interesting runner. Most of his form last season was in deep ground over sprints and 7 furlongs, and they've sort of tried to eke out his stamina in 3 runs this season at big prices. There hasn't been a fiver for him in any of his runs. And last time out at Musselburgh, I mean, I really like Billy Loughnane. He's a top-class jockey. I think he's booked again this afternoon for Global Skies. But actually, that's rubbish. Kieran O'Neill's book. Billy Loughnane rode him at Musselburgh, and he got in a really bad position, well out the back, and stayed on steadily. He never got involved. As I say, Musselburgh to Newmarket this is probably quite a big jump up in grade, and he's back a furlong in trip on much better ground here. So, but he's just a horse. I'd say to sort of listeners, he's one to have winning. If you play on the exchanges and stuff, he could be 40 or 50-1. I'm confident he'll be in the first sort of 6 or 7. I think he'll run well, and there's good prize money here, so you'd think he'd be fancied. He's a lively outsider anyway.
Yeah, it could be the way to look at this race. Like you said, it's totally wide open, and with a few extra places at a few bookmakers, probably 25-1 mightn't be a bad shout there each way. I was kind of look. I thought Volterra kind of jumped off the page a bit here. Look, no fancy price there. I suppose 13-2 in this kind of contest, but still, look, sent off favourite for the Britannia, 11th of the 29th. A bit like my case for the filly in the mile handicap earlier on. I don't think that the bare result is kind of tells the whole story of the race. I suppose he was drawn kind of on the far side, really messy race, split into 3 groups, which is never really great viewing. The draw, I'd say, was probably his downfall, a bit similar to the filly in the race before. He was right on the wide outside, and I'd say that group probably just went a little bit harder than the rest. And if you just watch the finish, they kind of just got swallowed up by the middle and near side groups. They probably just went a bit harder, and he finished well clear of everything else in his group. He was sent off favourite that day, so obviously it was a disappointment. But I think, like, looking at the form of the Britannia, Skakuza was second that day, and Volterra had disposed of him fairly easily when they met in Newmarket over the same trip back in May. So kind of adds further claims to maybe the results didn't flatter Volterra awfully in the Britannia, but I thought he was impressive when he won in Newmarket the time before that. He pulled fairly hard, showed a fairly smart turn of foot to put that to bed. He had some good colts in behind. Camden Colt was 3rd that day as well, where he opposes here. But look, I think Volterra, I'll give him another chance to kind of make up for that Ascot disappointment. Didn't have the look of the race that day, so I will be on his side in the mile handicap. So we'll go on to the 325, the Superlative Stakes. I suppose last year we saw maybe arguably one of the best ever 2-year-old performances in this race when City of Troy blew the field apart. I don't think there's anything anywhere near that this level in it this year, unfortunately, but interesting little contest still, I suppose. 6-4 Ancient Truth. I thought that looked quite short for the Godolphin team, and 9-2 Columnist, who comes here after a good run in the Coventry. Stephen, I'll give it over to you. What was your thoughts on this one?
Well, I do think the favourite is a very short price here, Ancient Truth. I know he's Charlie Apple. He's 8 winners in the last 14 days. They're flying again, and he's won twice at Newmarket. It's been on very fast ground, and he has hung quite violently right on both occasions. I wasn't that impressed last time. It wasn't a very good race, so instinctively you want to be against him, I think, at a short price. I suspect, Emma, often when we say these sort of things, they end up being a much bigger price, and your sort of initial thoughts against them is probably tempered a bit. But I thought he was one to oppose at the price at the minute. The horse of Aidan O'Brien's, the path in on, well, he's got to be an interesting runner, but Aidan's not allowed to have winners at more than 6-4, is he? These sort of big price Saturday drifters, you can't normally find with Radar unless the heavy mob want to be on them. So I wouldn't have thought the Parthenon was anything amazing looking at the early market, but maybe the late market will be a better guide. I thought that Pental Bay was hugely overpriced here at 9-1, and I'm going to back him each way. George Bowie's going pretty well. He's had 6 winners in the last fortnight. I think Pental Bay comes from the best 2-year-old race of the whole season so far at Royal Ascot. That was the race won by Bedtime Story, the Chesham. The heavy mob did play on Bedtime Story. He won by about 15 lengths in it. I think it was 9.5, but it looked about 15. It looked like a race at Foss Lass. But the runner-up Pental Bay ran a remarkable race. I watched it back this morning. He fell out the stalls and he was locked away, and he never got any run at all from halfway, and then stayed on, obviously, for a very remote second. But the winner looked sort of the next sort of superstar filly of O'Brien's. The third, Brian, came out and won at Newbury last night on Thursday night by about 5 lengths, absolutely sluiced up. The fifth home, Miss El Fundy, has come out and won since. So it's very good form. And I was quite taken with Pental Bay's winning debut at Leicester on good to soft ground. So a little bit of cut here or decent ground would be absolutely fine. I thought 9-1 each way should run really well, I think.
Yeah, could definitely have big claims in this. Like, won't be anything as hot as what he met in Ascot. I don't think there'll be a bedtime story in this one. I didn't have a very strong view on it, to be honest, but I would be keen, similar to you, to take on the favourite at the price. I think 6-4. I wasn't overly impressed by Ancient Truth. I watched back his 2 races in Newmarket. I don't think it's really justified the price he is here. Columnist, I'd respect him. I thought he ran a great race in the Coventry, but stepping up to the 7 furlongs here would be a question mark by our dad, out of a sprinting filly as well. I think most of the good horses on the dam side have been over a sprinting trip. So look, if he was guaranteed to stay the trip, I would back him. But I think there's big question marks there on pedigree at least. Look, outside of that, there's a few, like you mentioned, the Aidan O'Brien, one of the parting on, started off life in the Marble Hill, which probably would be encouraging, I suppose, making her debut in that type of race, and a few good calls against him that day. Wasn't overly impressive running in Goran next time though. Although Goran can be a tricky track. He kind of scrambled home a bit that day. Like you said, an Aidan O'Brien big price winner on a Saturday. They're probably not the most common occurrence. Look, I don't have a very strong opinion. I think Pental Bay probably isn't a bad shout there, 9-1 each way. Against a field I think probably lacking a star is fair enough to say. But we'll go on to the 4 o'clock there, the Banbury Cup. Another one, 21 or handicap. I suppose plenty of claims to be made. I think 130 carry the 1 has to be a standout. Ryan Moore booked for the first time. 7-1 Divine Libra, 7-1 Awal, and 8 Bar. Looks carry the 1 looks an obvious one. Beat plenty of these in the Buckingham Palace and Ascot, after having probably not the clearest passage of running. Stephen, what's your take here? I suppose he's short enough in a 21 or handicap.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's criminally underpriced. I mean, he's one of those sort of horses that everyone noted at the Royal Meeting, and he was very unlucky and all the rest of it. I mean, he's had 4 runs for Michael Bell since arriving from Johnny Murtagh. I'm not sure. Michael Bell's one of those trainers. He's not in my sort of trainers to be on side of, to put it politely. I wouldn't be guaranteed that he'd carry on holding his form for much longer, and he's priced because Moore's booked and everyone saw it at Ascot. I liked Awal here, but I have to say he was a double-figure price when I saw the prices, and looking now, he's around about 7 or 8-1. Maybe he'll drift back out on the day, and you can back him each way. He's one of these horses, Emma. He's been a non-runner about 10 times already. He's got to the race day twice at Doncaster and I think at Ascot. They took him out because the ground was too heavy at Donny and too firm at Ascot. But he's been declared up every Saturday for about the last 6 weeks. So I think he's ready, and I think this is probably the perfect ground, perfect trip, and everything's right for him. He was one of those. He's only actually won 1 from 9 on the turf, but I don't think he started bigger than 8-1 in any run last season. He ran every Saturday, and these Hot Heritage 25 runner handicaps, and he travelled through most of those races like 1 miles out of his mark and didn't quite deliver, didn't quite get a run. He still ran really well. I mean, I think he's the form choice here. He's bound to be fit. He's just one of those sorts. I don't think this is a race to take less than 10-1 anything, because we've seen Newmarket this week on the July course. They race in about 6 different groups, and you're probably sort of a 5-1 chance to be in the right group that they race in, apart from anything else. They're not always won on their merits on this course, and I'm not rushing to take short prices, but I think if a while drifts out to sort of 10-1 again, he's probably a pretty solid each way bet. The Yard have had a disappointing season, but they've had 3 winners in the last fortnight, so perhaps things are starting to come right now.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see how the kind of market develops overnight. The prices can change an awful lot between now and then, I suppose. Look, Carry the One, I just found it hard to get away from. Like you said, he is very, very short in a 21 handicap, though. But I just thought the way he won a Newmarket on third start, he beat a fair few of these who were reopposing today. He only got a £2 hike for that. Like you said, that really eye-catching run in the Buckingham Palace after getting a pretty interrupted passage, I suppose. But things have to go really right from here. It's a 21 handicap, and the way he's kind of ridden, he comes from the back. Everything kind of has to go right in the day. But I suppose if anyone's going to find the gaps, it'll probably be Ryan Moore. But 130 just looks too short. If he drifted out on the day, might consider backing him, but in this nature of race, of the way he's ridden in particular, it could be quite difficult, even though he probably is one who's just kind of waiting to win off that mark, I would say. But we'll go on to the 4:35, the feature race of the day, the July Cup. Ines Sheeran, the standout, I suppose, 3-year-old sprinter of the year in here at 9-4, Van Dijk 4-1, River Tiber 13-2. So it's the 3-year-olds dominating the betting. Do you think it's maybe a bit naive to underestimate the old boys in here?
Well, I probably do, Emma. I'm going to, hard to believe, I know. I'm going to side with the old boys. I do think the front 3 here, if you can beat one of them, you'll beat all 3 of them. I know that's a strange thing to say, but they're sort of 5-2, 4-1, and 7-1. You're getting around about 13-8 on the front 3 coupled in a red hot sprint. It wouldn't be for me. I'd have to be a bookmaker. I think I'd either put the front 3 in, try and get them in cheaply. If the 3-year-old form isn't much good, you'll beat all 3 of them. I mean, of course, it's hard to know. Ines Sheeran's been extremely impressive. I do think his win at Haydock, Van Dijk did not perform. He pulled hard on soft ground. I think they said he needed the run. He definitely did. But he was much more impressive on fast ground at the Royal Meeting. Again, I don't think that was the strongest race in the world. It's very difficult when you get completely different lines of form, and the 3-year-olds have all got completely different lines of form to all the old 6-7-year-old sprinters who've been running in these Saturday sprints for the last couple of seasons. I mean, I do think Regional, again, repeating myself, he was around 12-1 when the prices come out. He's around about 8. Maybe you'll get 10 on the day. I think he's bound to give his running, and I quite like the fact that he's got plenty of early pace, and I can't find loads of definite front runners in this race, which is an unusual thing to say in a group race sprint. Usually there's loads of pace and they all want to do the same thing, but I could see Regional blazing the trail and perhaps fending them all off. I thought Mill's Stream was overpriced as well at around about 12-1. I mean, he's a 4-year-old, a relative youngster, but I like Jane Chapelheim. She places her horses really carefully. They're a bit quiet at the minute, 0-3 in the last fortnight, but she hasn't got many horses. So Millstream has run well on all 3 occasions this season and seems bound to give his running again. So I think my way into this race is probably to back Regional to win and maybe Millstream each way. I think that might be better value than trying to lay sort of 6-4 on the front 3, all the 3-year-olds couple.
I was kind of thinking along the same lines as you there, looking for a pace angle. I thought Swing Along was kind of really, really overpriced there, 25-1. She ran a massive race, and it was called the Diamond Jubilee. I'm not sure what it's called now, something similar at Ascot anyway. But she breaks rapidly from the gates, and we saw it at Ascot. She kind of trailblazed the whole way up the straight, and she had a massive race to be second that day to Kadim. Kind of just made a meta course specialist there, I suppose. Maybe she was a bit unlucky not to land it, but she kind of seems to come to life a little bit around this time of year. Like last year we saw her, but she third in the Commonwealth Cup to Shaquille She went on then to win that Fillies Group 3, which is being run this Saturday again at York. On same day last year. I think on the back of that Ascot one, I think 25-1 is a bit disrespectful to her, to be honest. But I do think in a Sheeran will be quite hard to beat here. Look, I suppose he disappointed in the Guineas, but since they dropped him back to the sprinting trips, he's been really, really good. And we were kind of mentioning the ground. Like you said, he's won on soft to heavy, he's won on good to farmer. I think he's pretty versatile in that regard. I think he is the one they all have to beat, and I wouldn't be surprised if he put in another big performance here. But I think Swing Along at big prices, 25-1, she could definitely outrun those odds. Like you said, I think there's probably only maybe 2 or 3 pace angles. Swing Along and Regional, obvious ones. They're drawn kind of opposite sides, 2 and 7. So it'd be interesting to see who gets the lead first. But I think she's a good filly, and she's being underestimated there, 25-1. But might back a little reverse forecast with herself and in a Sheeran on the day, possibly.
Like
But
it. Emma, I was going to ask, what do you think about River Tiber in this race? Because it wouldn't
yeah,
be. It's not like Aidan to get it wrong. I mean, he started him off over a mile first time out of the Curry. I mean, I thought he ran perfectly well in the 2000 Guineas behind Rosalium and Hartem. I mean, that form's all right. And then last time out, he was one of the misses. The heavy mob missed. I mean, they sent him off 13-8 in that huge field for the Jersey behind Hartem. I mean, it wasn't obvious. There weren't many excuses, but he's now back to sprinting. I mean, this is a
it's
fascinating runner.
it's strange. I saw someone mentioning was it yesterday, that this was always the intended target for him. So it seems an awfully strange route to the July Cup, starting off over a mile, back to 7, and now back to 6. Look, I suppose last year you would have said, he was being obvious contender from this, but I find him hard enough to fancy here now. I think Van Dijk has the form over him. They met in Newmarket as 2-year-olds, look, 3-year-olds now. But look, I was really encouraged by his run in the Guineas at the Curragh. But after that run in Ascot, I backed him that day, and he was really, really strongly fancied, and just seemed to not fire for. I don't think any real solid reason came out of it. Maybe the good to firm ground could be a
Yeah,
bit of an excuse. I think a lot of the Irish horses were, a lot of the Irish trainers, I suppose, were putting it down that maybe Irish good to firm wasn't quite as quick as what they were calling it at Ascot. A few of the high profile Irish horses maybe didn't perform on it. But look, I'd find it hard enough to forgive him here. I couldn't back him, even though he looks 13-2, probably not a bad price on his 2-year-old form. But what kind of chances did you give him?
I thought he was a fascinating market horse. I mean, he could be. I don't. Sometimes when horses drop back to sprinting, I quite like them because these races, we've touched on regionals, got plenty of early. You've said about Swing Along. I suppose Art Powers in the race. If they do take each other on and have a real flare up, I mean, River Tiber, you'd have thought with more shoving
Yeah.
along from halfway, you can imagine him flying home. I mean, the only thing is, I hadn't really started the season off thinking he was going to be a sprinter, and not, it didn't really look like he was a non-stayer at a mile to me. So
Yeah.
I don't know. He's one of those horses. You wouldn't be surprised if he ended up 4-1 and there was loads of money for him again if they've got an excuse for Royal Ascot. By the same token, we said earlier, if he ends up sort of 10 or 12-1, you suspect he'll be running on 5th or 6th, and
Yeah.
it's probably not his game. But no, it's a fascinating race. It'll be very interesting to see about the 3-year-olds against the older horses. Instinctively, I do think they're all too short. And as I say, if you beat one, I think you'll beat all 3 of them.
Yeah, look, like you said, there's plenty in here could run massive races, and it's a cracking July Cup. In fairness, like seeing these 3-year-olds coming up against the older horses, kind of battle hardened, classy older horses. I'm really looking forward to it. River Tiber, as you said, could run a big race, but I'm hoping in a Sheeran can kind of back up those 2 big performances, because he's kind of, I thought he maybe solidified himself as a bit of a star at Ascot last time, so it'd be nice to see him keep on that upward curve. But we've kind of covered all of Newmarket there now. I might give it over to you, Stephen, if you have anything else, maybe elsewhere that you had your eye on Saturday or
Yeah,
Sunday.
there's a couple of interests. Just first of all, I thought at Newmarket in the first race, there's a very interesting filly of William Knight's, Bintabuhu. I haven't seen any prices yet, and it's always difficult to pass comment without seeing the markets. But she was a very promising second here on her debut. She missed the break and she ran on really strongly. There was money for her as well, and I think she's probably the nicest filly that William Knight's ever had, apparently. So Bintaboo is one to keep an eye out for. But my nap of the weekend runs at Ascot in the 220, and that's Sonny Liston of Rafe Beckett. Now, Beckett, we said earlier, he's had 9 winners in the last 14 days, 20% strike rate. They're all flying, and Sonny Liston's developed into a really nice horse since arriving from Charlie Hills, running in all those top heritage handicaps all last season. Returned with a really impressive win at Newbury over a mile, and then at Ascot in the Royal Hunt Cup, I thought ran an absolute blinder behind Wild Tiger, who is, to use a cliche, one of those group horses in a handicap. And Sonny Liston was a bit unlucky not to beat him, I thought. He didn't get a clear run at a crucial stage and did well to challenge him. I think that's by far the best form on offer. I think he's achieved a lot more than the short price favourite Quidar, who obviously is unbeaten, could be anything, 3 from 3. But that race he won, the third, Majum, definitely doesn't want soft ground. And the runner-ups is what he is, Docklands. I thought that was a modest race, and I think the form of Sonny Liston is much stronger. The only question mark, listening to Emma Ramsden, who runs all these horses for the Chelsea mob, she was saying earlier in the week that Sonny Liston needs a strong gallop, and I suppose in a smaller field here, you wouldn't be absolutely guaranteed to get it, but hopefully he'll settle and they'll go a reasonable pace. I think the ground drying up to sort of good or good to soft at Ascot will suit him ideally, and I think at 7-2, he's probably the best bet of the weekend for me.
Sounds good. So, and Nap and Ascot there. I'm just going to give a mention to a couple of races in Ireland. Maybe not from a betting perspective this weekend. The first one I'm going to mention now is Beginner's Chase in Wexford. I just think it's one to definitely keep in the notebooks when looking towards Galway in a few weeks' time. I think there's a few in here that could be kind of being targeted at that. I suppose the first one, Ambitious Fellow for the Peter Fahey Yard. They love to target Galway. He won, was it the Boyle Sports handicap at the Galway Festival last year. He was a really highly rated hurdler. It was his second chase start when he was third in Limerick in May. I'm not sure what kind of price he's going to open up at. He's on 7-1 on the tissue, but I think that's probably worth taking note of. He's a Galway Festival winner. Fahey's love to target Galway. He has to win this to get in. He will be off here, and I think he could run a big race. But there's loads of interesting horses in this. Brazil, another one, making chasing debut, won on the 11 in Galway last year, has been out of form completely since then though, so I'd find him hard enough to fancy, but interesting. Maybe keep an eye on how he runs in that one. And then down the bottom there, Space Tourist, a really good hurdling filly for Willie Mullins, maybe just off the top level, but she does well in the summertime. Patrick's going to ride her. She gets the allowances from the geldings. Another one who could be possibly targeted at Galway, but I think Ambitious Fellow in particular here is one to keep an eye on, because they will be on the road to Ballybrit, you'd imagine, off the back of this, hopefully if you can get off the mark. But one more race and I'll give a quick mention to is in Navan on Saturday, and it's the 3:37. I just thought there was an interesting one. Our first time here for Kevin Coleman, Devil's Angel. Comes to the yard. We haven't seen him since he was running in England last September, I think. Dropping down the weight. I think like the English handicapper seems to give these kind of older horses a much better chance. Look, he hasn't won anything in 2 years, but he won off for a rating of 80 then. He's down to a mark of 72 now. Had been run incredibly as well last summer off a similar mark. Comes to the Kevin Coleman yard, an 8-year-old sprinter. You wouldn't know, maybe that's just that change of scenery could give a little bit of life back into him. Kevin Coleman's a kind of a young trainer, I suppose, but you'd have a lot of respect for him. I think he could have this gelding ready to rock and roll on the day. Definitely one for the tracker anyway. At least be interested to see what kind of price he opens up at. If he has double figure prices, maybe could be worth an each way bet. Just an eye catching one there for a start for a new yard. But we'll wrap it up there, Stephen. Thanks very much for all your contributions. But before we go, I'll get you to give a nap of the weekend. Oh, you already gave it. Sorry, Sonny Liston was the nap.
That's it. Yeah.
Sonny Liston the nap for you. I'll give mine. Look, in a Sheeran's kind of a boring one. I might go for Irish Side in the first race we previewed, the Fillies handicap at Newmarket. But in a Sheeran and that filly in the
Swing along.
I'll give them as a forecast as well. I think that might be a little bit of a fun bet to have. She's a big price, so that could pay out nicely if she pegs along in front. But we'll wrap it up there. Thanks very much, Stephen. All the viewers, I hope you enjoyed the show. And if you're going to have a bet this weekend, make sure to gamble responsibly. We'll be back on Monday to review all of the news from the week gone by.